All right, guys, we have an update for you on the Epstein files. This is a breaking news report from the Daily Beast. FBI's frantic scramble to redact the Jeffrey Epstein files revealed. If you were one of those people eagerly awaiting the transparency from this administration, then this story is not going to give you any sort of vote of confidence. Let's dive right in. Newly released internal emails show the FBI mounting a costly overtime-fueled sprint to analyze the Epstein files as political pressure grew to release them, in a project dubbed the Special Redaction Project, Bloomberg reports. Correspondence obtained and detailed by Bloomberg FOIA files lays out how FBI Director Kash Patel sent about 1,000 special agents to the Bureau's Central Records Complex in Winchester, Virginia, for crash course redaction training on the Epstein Transparency Project, also called the Special Redaction Project. Bloomberg's records show the Bureau paid $851,344 in overtime between March 17th and March 22nd alone. That's only about 5 days, and clocked 4,737 overtime hours from January through July, with more than 70% of that in March as personnel worked nights and weekends. Now, this is just a telling sign of the administration knowing and seeing this Epstein release sort of encroaching and coming, and the impending vote that was pushed forth by Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna. Credit to those gentlemen in Congress for getting that brought to the floor. We now have, that was signed and approved on the 19th. So we have 30 days from there to December 19th before they are released to the public. Mike, what do you make of all these efforts in the institutions and the FBI to redact, and all this training they've been going through, working all these overtime hours to, well, probably, as we all know, cover up as many names as possible, and we're not talking about the victims?
Well, as somebody who's been waiting to see more about the Epstein files finally get released and shared with the public after all this time, I'm upset, definitely, but also not surprised. We kind of knew that Trump's name has been in the Epstein files. Not only did Elon Musk come out on Twitter, putting him on blast right after the fallout over Doge, but you also had Pam Bondi, who briefed him, I believe back in June, if I'm not mistaken, that his name was mentioned multiple times, if not hundreds of times, through the files. So Trump is in the Epstein files. We know this, and pretty much since that story broke, like the confirmation, or at least the strong implication was there, Trump has been doing everything he can to distract and downplay and push aside. So to finally get things sort of marching forward, then we had the shutdown. Let's not forget as well that during the shutdown, Mike Johnson refused to seat the new representative from Arizona, specifically because she would have forced the DOJ to release the Epstein files based on calling this special vote in Congress, which, of course, now that the shutdown has ended and they can all pretend like this was all the plan all along, whatever, now they're sort of doing it the right way, but they could have done all this months ago. And more importantly, the DOJ is within the executive branch. There doesn't even need to be congressional approval for this. There doesn't need to be a vote. Trump released the MLK files. He released the JFK files. He released Amelia Earhart files, all at his own discretion. So all this stuff about him calling on Republicans to do the right thing and to vote for it, and I want to see them go after these Epstein files. He could have done this all on his own. So it's all total political theater. And in my opinion, all of that has just been an excuse to run the clock and give these people more time to redact things that not only could incriminate him, but could incriminate his friends, could incriminate Republican leaders. It also reminds me a lot of Joseph Smith, who is the DOJ official that a few months ago was caught in like an undercover investigative journal interview, or I guess sting, or whatever you want to call it. He was caught on camera saying that he's worked with the Epstein files, he's seen the Epstein files, and when asked, do you think they will release them, he said if they get released, they will redact it to protect Republicans and conservatives, and they will leave everything that exposes liberals and Democrats. So to see all of that kind of play out this way, I'm not surprised, and I think the biggest irony of it all is that they call it the Epstein Transparency Project, while it's also being referred to as the Special Redaction Project. So it's like feels like a bit of an oxymoron there.
Yeah, and what's going to happen when they release the Epstein files and they have all the Republican names redacted and censored, and they only show Democrat politician names in there? Are people? Do they think people are just going to be like, "Oh, okay, we got the full files"? No, people are going to be like, "What? How can we trust you that these are the only names attached to these files? Like, how can we possibly believe that only Democrats' names and Trump is nowhere to be found in his files? Like, no one's going to believe that. There's no way that news media outlets are going to believe that, or people watching are going to believe that. So I don't see what the long-term play here is. I'm sure they're figuring that out now as we speak, which is, again, to your point of buying time, seeing how to play this, play the cards right, or whatever. Um, yeah, it just there's such a 180 that this administration has had with Pam Bondi and Cash Patel, Dan Bongino, all these people. Like, yes, we're gonna finally get to see these files, and the more that they learned that, oh crap, Trump is like a main character in these, the more they started hushing up and pretending Epstein files. What are those? I've never heard of those files before. They're not sitting on my desk. I didn't never said that. What are you talking about? So this whole complete shift in this complete 180 is just very transparent, and I think the base sees that. The MAGA base sees that. I know a lot of this recent civil war that we're seeing within MAGA is because of the Epstein files, because of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene calling him out, Thomas Massey calling him out, others on the right as well, even the far right, demanding that those files be open and transparent. Of course, with protecting the victims' names. No one wants to see, know about the victims or anything, but we're talking about the people who are in power, who are being protected. And it's clear as day, not just to American citizens, but to people around the world are seeing this whole shenanigans play out. And they're looking at us like we're a clown show because, I mean, that's what we've become.
I'm glad you brought up Thomas Massey though, because definitely he needs some props. I'm always glad to give him credit because he is one of very few, if not the only Republican who has defied the administration on these Epstein files since day one. He has been the biggest pusher. If I'm not even mistaken, I think he might even be the main sponsor of the bill that's pushing for the Epstein files to be released. So, um, you know, as people say, he's a treasure that must be protected at all costs. You know that expression, and I think that we need to see more like this from the right. Um, but another thing that I also want to point out too is let's not forget about Ghislane Maxwell, who has been given all this special treatment, especially right after I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Trump's personal attorney met with her in prison for a private, behind closed doors meeting during the time that Congress was calling for her to publicly testify in front of Congress. So there was definitely some sort of deal worked out there because after that deposition with Trump's attorneys, she was then moved to a minimum security prison, which is not even like correctional facility policy. As being a sex offender and a sex trafficker, she is not allowed to be in the facility that she's in. So she's clearly got special privilege there. And then there's all these other reports about how she's getting, puppy playtime. She's getting the warden to send her mail out for her and do all these favors for her in the prison and things like that. So all of this is clearly in exchange for her saying, "Oh, well, I didn't witness Trump doing anything," which again doesn't even clear him of any wrongdoing necessarily. It just sort of advances, "Well, I didn't see it." But even then, she's been guilty of perjury before. So we know that she lies in court. We know that she lies under oath. How can we trust anything that she says? There's plenty of evidence that shows Trump had close connections, not only to her, but also Epstein. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of photos and, uh, records and all these things that kind of tie Trump to this Epstein scandal. And I think that, unfortunately, I'm probably a cynic here, but I wouldn't be surprised. I'm expecting that Trump will pardon her eventually. The time is probably not right just yet, especially with all the heat from the Epstein files at the moment. But all indicators point to he's seeking to pardon her, and he's even come out saying, "I'm allowed to do it if I want." So he hasn't ruled it out. He hasn't said, "No, I won't pardon her."